Hello! Today I'm going to talk about a very important costume and life skill, sewing on buttons. There are a few different types of buttons. There are flat ones with 2 holes, flat ones with 4 holes, and there's also these ones which you often find on coats or uniforms which have this little bit, and that's called a shank. And they come in different shapes and sizes. And the most common one is this type of one, which is from a shirt button. That's probably the one you'll spend most of your time sewing on. When sewing on a button, you can use button thread. It's much thicker than normal thread and is absolutely excellent for this job. If you don't have any, or it's not the right colour, you can use quadruple thread. And what I've done is I've threaded through 2 pieces of cotton, like I did before when we were sewing our other stitches. I don't know if you can see that there. Yeah, there you go. And then I've doubled it up and tied a knot at the bottom so that I now have 4 threads that will go through the fabric. So stitch through the fabric and put the button onto the thread. And I'm going to put mine across diagonally. Okay, then you want to go back into the fabric diagonally across from where you came up and come out again where you did before. Now don't worry too much about positioning, as we're going to put a shank on this which will help you out a bit. So when you stitch, give yourself a bit of slack. Now come up across from the last stitch so that you go into the next hole on your button, and then just cross over it and go back again. When you feel it's secure enough, we're going to make a shank. So to do this, what you want to do is you need to wrap your thread around your button, and then we're going to come up through the loop that we've made. I'll show you again. So you're wrapping it round, then you come up through the loop you've made to make a knot. You need to do this a couple more times, and we do this just to make it easier when you come to do up the buttons later on. Now just stab through to the back and then tie a couple of knots. And then, as always, I just stitch back through for neatness' sake. So I've got a lovely shirt here. And as you can see, the buttons come off. Oh no! And luckily I've got this button, which I can put back on again. So I'm going to pull out all the manky threads so that I don't get all tangled up when I do my stitching. That's my first step. Now I've got some holes left over, so it's very easy for me to tell where I need to sew my button, but it's not always so simple. So what do you do when it's not that lucky? So first I'm going to do up the buttons on either side of the missing one so that the costume lays flat. And then using chalk or a pencil, you just need to mark through the hole to the other side. And look, you can see there where I need to sew. So a quick top tip. If you don't have the button, some shirts have a spare at the bottom of the front on the reverse side. Or you might find one by the label. And some garments even have them in little plastic bags on the inside somewhere, so it's always worth a good look around. So I'm going to sew this on with the cross pattern again. But it is important to look at the costume and try to match what's been done on the other buttons. Sometimes they can be sewn on with 2 parallel stitches, for example. And you might not always find you need a shank when you're sewing them on, but I just always do this. from force of habit, really. If you're sewing something that's delicate or very thin, you might find the button rips through the fabric, so it will need to be reinforced. You could use cotton tape or iron on, just a small piece of it, or you can use bias binding, which I like because it's naturally fray resistant. So you need to cut out a small square and just put it behind the fabric when you sew. And now you can see my fabric is reinforced and the button won't rip through it. If you want to, you could sew round the patch to keep it tidy. And you could put a whole strip of tape on if you were going to do a line of buttons. Let's imagine we're going to mark out buttons on this. So you need to decide how far apart they're going to be and also how far in from the edge. If you notice with this shirt, there's always an overlap left, so there's no gaping when it's done up. On a pattern, you'll often get told how far in to mark them. So let's just imagine I need them in 3/4 of an inch. You could draw in a line with a ruler if you like. And then I'm going to mark across, let's say 2.5 inches apart. So now you have a cross, so you know where to stitch on your buttons. Okay, so the quickest way to sew on a button with a shank is just to go over and over it a few times. I'm sewing from top to bottom, but you might need to do it from left to right. Just have a look at how the other buttons are sewn on your garment and copy them. Way number 2, it's pretty much the same, but I'm going to add a shank. Just a word of warning, it's pretty easy for the stitching to get twisted as you go, so just check it each time. And I know that this button already has a shank, so why am I adding more thread to it? But it will just make it more secure, and obviously it's going to help you when you're using the button. Okay, way number 3, and this is the gold standard. So first of all, just do a little stitch to hold it in place. But come back through and then just hook your thread. That make your first little loopy bit. Now come back down through the fabric, like so, and just pull it, but leave a little loop at the end. Now go through the shank of the button, like that, and then hook the loop of thread and pull through and just pull the knot tight, so you've just made a knot there, can you see? So I'll just do this a few more times, it's speeded up. So you're leaving your loop, going back through and hooking it through, and this makes a really nice secure way to sew your button on. Can you see how much better attached they are as you go down the line there? well, that's it. Thank you for watching. See you next time.